Buraya jahe, magedama jahe. Buraya muere, no magedama muere. Those are the 4 seasons in Kikuyu culture, and that was just an interesting fact that I learned from this book. Today, I wanted to talk about Facing Mount Kenya by Kenya's first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So, if you don't know Jomo Kenyatta, he was the first president of Kenya, and I think in the 20s, that is somewhere there, he went to England and he was studying his degree in anthropology, as well as, I think he was also a farm laborer. But yeah, he did some stuff in London at the time, and he was studying at LSE, if I'm not wrong, yes. And so this book, I guess, was a result of his experience there and his work there. And I thought it would be interesting to just bring this up. I read this book to begin with, again, because I was trying to learn about my culture and my traditions, everything that it meant, like what did it actually mean to be a Kikuyu. And I was very curious and I wanted to just know more. And as opposed to time or historically where this kind of information was passed down orally, that was just, it's not something that's as popular or as casual as even Kenyatta says in the book, because he says, well, you know, he actually didn't think he would ever have to write about Kikuyu culture because he's so used to just having it in his head, and that's what you do. You learn to imitate, you observe things, and then you don't need to keep them in a book because everyone knows everything about the culture because you've been taught it. It's just about memory. But yeah, so he said he was mainly writing this to inform people outside of his tribe, mainly Europeans and Africans. I think he said people who were disassociated or separated from their tribal life. So that's me, and that's why I read the book, because I was not exactly aware of everything about my tribe, or my nation. And last time I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I should have. In Africa's Spanish name, I spoke about how Chinua Achebe talked about the Igbo nation, and in this one, Kenyatta also talks about the Kikuyu Nation. And one of the key things that I think someone has to take from that is the fact that the kind of the nation, the Kikuyu Nation, was sort of self-sufficient in its way. Like everything is just embedded together. So this book was published in 1938, although my particular copy was published in 1965 by Vintage, yes. And I think one of the key selling points about this book was that it had the introduction done by B. Malinowski, who, if you know anything about Malinowski, was a big, and still is, I guess, legendary in the field of anthropology, just because, okay, maybe legendary is a big word, but he is a big guy in anthropology. And so I think that was one of the things that were, a selling point in this book. And actually think the introduction as well is just as important as what you read after, because it still says a lot about the time and the context and the people that were, involved. So in the introduction, Malinowski starts off by saying about how if a white person goes to, different places, comes back with all this information about what they've learned, no one really questions it. But if someone who's not white does the same thing, they always have to then justify their claims. And so he says that he claims that he's not going to do that in this book, which is kind of his way of saying, it's cool. He doesn't need anyone to speak for him. He knows what he's saying. But even if he says that he's not going to kind of try to justify everything Kenyatta has said, I think he goes on to do exactly that. And so one of the ways that he kind of justifies why it's okay for you all majority white readers to trust what Kenyatta is telling you is because, yes, he's an African, he has the experiences of an African, but he is trained in Western discipline. He's a Western, he's gone through the training of a Western scholar. And I just didn't like that, because that's kind of saying, he just took back what he said about justifying. Like, why wasn't it enough that this is someone who identified himself as a representative of the tribe, which is just brackets a very problematic thing. But either way, he's gone through a whole lived experience of the tribe. He's from the tribe. Why doesn't he get the same prestige that white anthropologists at the time were probably getting? So that's one of the issues that kind of sets this off. But it says more about, I guess, the people and their attitudes at the time, and just still having this idea of Western scholar discipline or training is far superior than even people's own experiences. And I think that's still something that somehow lingers on to today. One of the areas, though, where I do agree with Malinowski in this introduction is where he says, he kind of, I guess this is his own critique of the book or his own review of the book, which he says that Kenyatta writes almost objectively and without passion. That is very true. I agree with that. And it's one of the things that I hate about this book. To be honest, I don't think that this is a book, you read on holiday or when, as in, I don't think it's like a book that you read passively, because it does lack that passion. You read this because you feel you have to. I read it because I felt, okay, I have to know about my tribe, and I was like, okay, he's the first person at the time. So as in, he just had all this advantages as to why you should read this. It was like, it's written by the first president, it's written by Kikuyu, and yeah, it's available. So for me, he had that kind of emotional motivation, and it's still good to read if you're interested in other people's cultures except your own or outside of your own. But it's not that fun, to be honest, because the way he writes it's very not even ethnographic, but it's very he's just laying it out to you. He's just telling you what things. It's almost like reading, I wouldn't say a Wikipedia page, but it's like reading it's like a textbook. It's like a textbook. So that's one of the flaws in the book. And it makes me sad because I wish, it didn't need to be romanticized. It didn't need to be glamorous, but it would have been nice to just have it be a bit more personal. Like, I would rather have learned about the Kikuyu tribe and the Kikuyu, our ways of life, by maybe reading his personal experiences, things that he'd done, as it just maybe make it more not exactly autobiographical, but just a bit more passion. Yes, passion would have been good. One of the reasons why I also have a problem with the fact that the book does kind of sometimes come across as being it's almost scientific. I mean, I feel like it's the pressures of, kind of linking to the point of Western scholar superiority complex. It would make sense why he would feel like, okay, I'll just detach my personality or, humor and, just maybe details of experience, just because maybe that makes it look less objective. Like, it makes it look too personal, that now it's not scientific, it's not legit anymore. And I think that's one of the flaws of the book, because then now it's like trying to aspire for this objective experience and objective analysis of our tribe, when what's objective if not what you actually know or have experienced yourself. And so that's one of the negative things about how the book altogether comes across. And but also, this is made worse for me by the fact that Kenyatta says that he tries to, yes, bring out all the facts from his experience, but he makes a deliberate statement saying that he wasn't going to I can't remember the exact words, but he says that he's not going to kind of write about the grievances that I think any progressive African would have. Now, this is, again, bearing in mind that this is obviously Kenya is under colonialism. It still is. But at this particular time, I think the conversations and just the gearing up, I think, towards just the build up to Mau Mau, I think that was maybe something that was happening underground gradually. So, and just across the continent, obviously, we were under colonial rule. And I feel like him saying I'm going to put that aside, put my grievances aside, and give you all the facts, just felt very I won't say counterproductive, but it felt counter-progressive to me and I feel like I didn't want him to not be passionate. I didn't want him to put away his grievances. I think I wanted him to be angry. When I was reading, I was like, no, you should be angry. Like, you have a right to be angry. And I think him deciding that he wasn't going to bring those grievances out in a very kind of not outspoken, but in a very specific or particular or expressive way, I think he gave up his power. I believe that by not talking about colonialism, by not talking about the issues that are happening, he gave up his power. And I think we've never really gotten that power back. And I think that's a problem. And I think that, to me, makes me question his legacy just a bit more. Speaking of legacy, obviously, well, not obviously, but Kenyatta is the father of the current president. And I'm always just wondering, like, how do these are two significant figures in our history, and the matters of land always come into play. And so I just in the introduction of the book, I had so many just doubts about how to perceive everything Kenyatta was saying, because he says things like, that the tribe had trusted him, with land matters. He was in several committees. He was, he just been on every respectable committee on land issues, and so he saw himself as a representative of the tribe. Yet when he was kind of giving in the preface, when he's giving all this information of just the basic information of who the Kikuyu are living in the 5 districts, he also says that the Kikuyu live as squatters on European land. And that, to me, was a huge red flag, because on European land, really, I hated that he said that, because it was like, hello, it's not European land. This is the land of the Kikuyu people, and they are being displaced from their land by European colonialists. And so I felt by him saying that, then he just I felt like he accepted the displacement of his people, and then him then deciding not to express the grievances was him actually not representing his people. So I feel I kind of lost the trust that I needed, or just the comfort in reading this book. I really would have preferred the whole traditional thing of around the fireplace with my grandmother and my great-grandmother and my great-great whoever great is around to tell me the history, because that would have felt a lot warmer, a lot more comforting. But this one just felt a bit uncomfortable. And yes, you take the information, but with a pinch of salt. But yeah, in the book, it is so deep. There's so many. Yes, he does go into depth about different aspects. So from the family unit, talking about Pare na Mohirega, na age groups, talking about land and land tenureship, and just all the rights and traditions of acquisition of land. Talking about marriage, the importance of marriage in Kikuyu life, and the land being the mother of the tribe. In talking about medicine, talking about magic. I like the magic chapters. That was so intriguing, and that's, I think, one of the few places where he was able to sneak in maybe an element of himself. But I feel like reading the book, because I've read it like once and then gone back to bits in the book. But I honestly feel the journey reading the book, because there's so much that I didn't know, reading it and just reading something and being like, really? There's so much of that. And I feel it's just important, if you are someone who is maybe tarigiwe mu Gikuyu na no ndui maundu maingi uhoro wa Ugikuyu kana Gikuyu. So then I think but maybe the best way with my to like just your journey to yakusoma from one place to another, and just the realization is, I think it's good. It has some emotional effect, but I think that's just the whole thing of when you're lost and you're trying to find things to just grab onto about your history and about yourself, then yeah, it just brings a different energy. But anyway, there are other bits in the book, very interesting things, but I think there is just a huge, great need for just a different edition of this book. Like someone should write a new version where we look at what, you know, what's the Kikuyu tribe, how is the Kikuyu tribe today, or not tribe, or how is the Kikuyu Nation today. It's important to know. It would be important to look back at these things because there's so many aspects that have changed. I think the land is one of them. Land is such a still, I think it's a sensitive issue, just because it's such a big transition. You know, we come from a place where, I guess in his time and before that, where the land, you know, was respected in a different way. You know, it was the mother of the tribe. There was so much that went with it, to now where, because of the whole colonial process, the just immense privatization of land, you know, women only own like under 1% of title deeds in Kenya. So, I mean, but that was something that previously wasn't an issue, you know. So I think there's just so much that has changed that it would be nice to just have like a new mirror to our nation, as in the Kikuyu Nation, as is today. One of the other noticeable things about the book is that, or just about, you know, looking at our culture, our tradition, is that we've come from a place where the Kikuyu Nation just was, every component was working together, right? But now it's not the same. You know, before the religion, everything is just under one umbrella. But now I feel we've come to a point where it's almost like a double life, you know. For weddings, you know, half of I think the preparation towards the wedding is often so cultural. And the actual wedding day is then like a Christian wedding, or a Western wedding rather. And so, you know, I feel there's always just like two sides to it. You know, you're always trying to balance the two sides. And you know, I think that's something sensitive to debate and something that does need debate and maybe an evaluation as well. You know, like what's the progress, or what's the non-progress. So yeah, that's why I still think this book needs a different edition, and mainly also written in our own language. Yes, absolutely. It's written in English. I think it was written for Europeans, no matter what they say. So that was Facing Mount Kenya. And yes, so I recommend it. It's still important history, but it's something to obviously take alongside other forms of literature, or definitely orature. And but I hope it's been informative. And so if you did like this, then please feel free to share, and feel free to subscribe and share it with people who might be interested in this too. I'll see you next time. Bye.